Welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to be working on Unit 2, and this is basically an intro to Excel that we're going through tonight. I am going to be working off of the PowerPoint that's included in this unit, mostly as a guide to make sure that I'm talking about all the primary topics in this unit. I will just kind of remind you that we have a list of topics here. This is what we're going to try to go through tonight, and we should be able to do that. There's a few links here at the top of the unit too. These all break out to, I think, typically LinkedIn Learning to look at these topics. And as we kind of move forward, I know you guys didn't get a lot of preview on this unit tonight, but the way that we are going to operate going into the future is I will always make sure that I have the next unit available at least 4 or 5 days in advance of us having a class session. And when I provide links like this, I provide information. What I would appreciate is if you do watch those videos and kind of move through the content, because it kind of reinforces what we're learning. You can also bring up the PowerPoint and try the stuff in the PowerPoint, or at least read the PowerPoint. So you have a little bit of a preview of what's coming. If you prefer to just wait for the class to happen and absorb the material that way, that's absolutely fine. And as always, I will try to screen record what I'm doing and then post it the following day so you can always follow along. Where it gets a little tricky though is, with the due dates, if you look at the due dates here, we still have plenty of time to get this stuff in. And if we have enough time, and I don't know how this is going to pan out tonight. I don't know if we'll be able to get to the exercises. If we have enough time, we'll try, right? Otherwise, what will happen is we'll push them to next week and we'll look at the solutions. But I won't do a complete manual breakdown and walkthrough of all the assignments, because I do expect you to put a little bit of time into this and get a feel for the product. So it's not going to be like one of my coding classes where I'm holding your hand the whole time. We'll look at like key aspects, like putting a spreadsheet together, getting the data in is usually not that hard. It's more the formulas or the formatting or the little codes that we type in behind the formulas that are the important part. But I'm just kind of giving you a preview of what our assignments are and what it looks like. I do have the PowerPoint up on screen here and ready to roll. I'm going to leave it in non-full screen view, at least for this session. When we get to the AI class later, I'll probably go full screen. And once again, I'm using this as a guide for just talking about the product. What I do want you to do first, though, and before we kind of dig into like a guided approach to looking at it, I want to make sure that everybody can either bring up an installed version of Excel, and you can see I just launched it from my taskbar here, or you can launch it from your start menu, of course, by just typing Excel, or, it happens to be pinned in my start menu. For this week, if you're not using an installed version, you can use the Office 365 browser-based version. We should be able to do everything we need in the browser version. And you can tell I'm saying that a little pensively, because I do run into stuff all the time that just doesn't work here, or I don't know where to find it because it's slightly different. Microsoft has made an attempt to make the browser version nearly, as tightly integrated as the non-browser version. But please keep in mind, especially with super high-end features, there's going to be stuff that you just can't do in the browser version. It's just not built to do all the same things. Right? For most of what people use spreadsheets for, which is like lists, columns, you make simple calculations, simple charts and graphs, it'll work just fine. Often when you're working in the browser-based version, and you try to employ a higher feature, it'll have a thing that's like open in Excel. And it's like, yeah, I guess I have to, right? Because it's not going to work in the browser version. The one nice thing about the browser version, though, is Microsoft's taken a nice tip from Google in that it has become a lot easier to share a spreadsheet and have multiple people edit it at the same time in the browser. And I think that's pretty slick. I will tell you though, from a professional standpoint, I'm always a little pensive with the Microsoft products. I like the Google sharing a lot better than the Microsoft sharing. And if you really dig into it, you'll also discover that once you're working in the installed product, you have the same capability. Um, we will, on occasion, do some comparisons to Google Sheets. Google Sheets, for all intents and purposes, is kind of a clone of Excel, but it does have some notable quirky differences, right? And I know I did this question before, with the little green check marks and red X's. I'm going to bring up my little participant window here again. How many of you have ever worked in Google Sheets to do any work? All right, so it's kind of a 50-50 split. Okay, if you could clear the check marks and the X's. Um, I had a secondary question, but now it evades me, so it must not have been too important. All right, I'm going to be working off the installed version. So what I am going to do to begin with is when you're working with the modern versions of Excel and you launch the product and you're not opening a spreadsheet directly, you end up in this view, right? So you end up in a view where you're allowed to open or create a new document. You have a list of your most recent files, and there's some other setting things here. But generally speaking, you get into this interface, you're creating a new workbook, or you're opening one that's on the list, or finding one somewhere in your file system and opening it. I'm going to go ahead and create a blank workbook, and I know we did this last time. And then I'm also going to turn on my ribbon bar, and we'll talk about this. I believe it's part of the PowerPoint. But if you are not seeing what they call the ribbon bar, click on your home menu, and then you'll notice here on the far right, there's this little drop down arrow, and I'm going to switch mine to always show ribbon. And that is we'll call it the default modern view for all the Office products now, is to display the ribbon bar. Now, you guys should turn yours on and leave it on, at least for now, right? The reason why is because most of the stuff that you're going to want to do in any one of your menus, if you like start flipping through these, is probably going to be on that ribbon bar, right? But I'll tell you, from the old days of working Excel, we used to see Excel like this, right? So we would just see the menus. And then if you wanted to dig into the menu, you hit your Alt key. And then notice how the little letters pop up, right? And if I want, for example, to go to the home menu, I would type H, and then it appears. And then all the items that are on the menu also have a little letter next to them. So if I want to make a font color or conditional formatting or whatever, I can hit the letter. Now, this is kind of strange, but like the very early versions of Excel and the very early versions of spreadsheets were often menu driven like this. So I've gotten to the point where I learned Excel so long ago and some of the tricks for Excel that I still go to the Alt key and do like a 3 or 4 key sequence to trigger the effect I want, because I have it memorized, for the last like 30 or 40 years, ironically. That's going to be an odd way to work. But I just want to let you know that if you ever get on a system and, hey, the mouse battery is dead, the touchpad doesn't work, or something like goofy like that, you can still work Excel with the keyboard. The Alt key triggers the letter coding for the menu. And I think it's kind of cool, right? Just to be aware of that. Generally speaking, though, in the old days, we would have just regular menus. So you'd click on a menu item and it would bring down a drop down list of what you could do from that menu. I'm not sure exactly what year it was. Let's just, probably, maybe even 20 years ago now, they put the ribbon bar in the product. And the very first reaction I had to it was like, oh my God, they ruined it. That was my reaction. No kidding. I'm like, do I really need this big icon to do this? I mean, I know where it is in the menus, that kind of thing. But then as I kind of started working with it, I got so used to the ribbon bar, I don't think I could ever go back now. Right. So this is kind of like the modern mindset. You will notice that there are different commands on each one of the interfaces. Some of it might mean nothing to you at this point. Some of it might mean a lot to you. And you will probably in your lifetime, never use all the stuff on the menus, right? I've been using this product, I kid you not, for like, you know, since the 90s, basically. Um, and I'm not sure if that's exactly when it came out. We could look that up, I suppose. But I don't think I've used all the features within it. And that's just crazy to kind of think about. Granted, I do go through periods where I use it a lot and periods where I don't touch it for a while. It's all based on necessity. What has happened though, uh, lately, and because of the rise of data, basically, and the rise of AI, um, as we're going to discover in the AI class, AI is fueled by data, and data often travels through Excel, right? So this is the connecting pieces here between the classes. All right. Another thing to kind of notice, and we'll see these once again in the PowerPoint, is the row and column structure, right? The columns are lettered going across. When they exhaust the alphabet, they just start doubling it up, right? So when they go past Z, it's AA, right? And then the rows are numbered. Also notice that whenever I click around the sheet and I land in a cell, that's what we call these cells, the corresponding row and column headers are highlighted so you know where you're at. You can navigate with a mouse, and generally speaking, I think, you know, newer generation unit users are probably default mouse users and drive most of their actions through the mouse. People that come from like kind of like the old menu driven DOS days and stuff like that, like myself, often go to the keyboard for commands, like I was indicating before, and tend to navigate more with the arrow keys. So I can like left, right arrow, up, down arrow, right? The tab key moves me across, and the enter key moves me down, right? So these are real fundamental aspects.
I have a
Another
real
thing,
quick question.
yes, Noah.
So you do recommend, like I know we were talking about these unicorns last unit. A lot of those guys don't use their mouse at all. Like, is that something, is it that much more efficient?
There is, now we're getting into like computer usage philosophy because, real frankly, right, like these are the goofy kind of things. Sometimes I'll record into my videos, right? Because it's like, I'm clicked over here, but I want to go up here, right? And if I do it with my mouse, I gotta put my hand on my mouse, move it all the way across my mouse pad, right? Like it's a heavy lift, and click up here to get there. Or I could just know that if I press, function control home, I'm there, right? So like these are goofy little things, real frankly, like goofy little usage things. But when you do watch somebody who's a true power user on a piece of software like this, it is a combination of keyboard commands, weird like keyboard, let's call it keystroke combos. So like for example, if I want to save a document, and actually this is kind of a nice thing to do here. If I'm on a menu here, right? Notice if I wanted to basically uh, perform an action, and this is not a good example, but I'm trying to think here. Uh, all right, here's a better example. I'm hovering over the bold key in the ribbon bar. Do you notice a little box pops up and it says Control B? Yeah, and very rarely when I'm trying to make something bold in a spreadsheet do I click on that button. Yeah, and this is, and Noah, that's really kind of an astute thing to say because yeah, I do see that people who are true power users in a product like this tend to be more keystroke driven than they are mouse driven. However, and this is, the big however, um, Microsoft has done extensive efforts knowing that people are mouse users and touchpad users to enable what we call context sensitive menus, which means when I right click on something, it'll give me all the commands that are most common with whatever I'm working on at the moment in that particular spot, which is the cell that would be a tribute that I would normally have to go to the menus for, right? And then I do want you to notice, and I don't know if you can see this, but like the T is underlined here in the menu, and the C is underlined, and the D is underlined. And what that means is once the right click menu is up, you can press that letter to perform the action. And so true power users, I think these days, old days, they would just do everything with the keyboard. These days, I think most power users are right click keystroke, or if they memorize the keystroke like I have, for example, they go to that. And I think that that's really helpful. Um, what I will tell you though, there's no real right or wrong. I mean, if you're performing the same action, whether you're right clicking, going to the menu, going to the ribbon bar, doing the keystroke command, and you're performing the same action, whatever, you're performing the same action. You just do the one that feels most comfortable, right? What I discovered, and this happened when I was at, I think, my very first like IT intern job, and they had me basically doing database work, like I was doing database entry, and a lot of times I was grabbing stuff from spreadsheets and moving it over. You find efficiencies to work really, really fast, and that's where Excel becomes super, super cool, right? Like, and I'll show you a bunch of those kind of things because and chances are you might know some tricks that I don't even know, and it's all about accelerating workflow, right? Now that they're going to be adding Copilot into this, now I'm really getting afraid because you can just ask, Copilot to do it for you, but that's going to be the wave of the future. And don't fight the future, embrace it and leverage it, is the smart play. All right, let's get away from this view now. Let's get into the PowerPoint. Let's talk about the stuff that we're going to do. So we'll learn how to create and save, do all the stuff that's listed here. So basic math, adjust columns. We'll play with some really simple formulas, formatting, etc. They do a little thing on printing, and I will say that these days it's pretty rare that you're probably going to print something, but it is kind of a thing. So let's kind of take a look at the content here and take a look at like what a spreadsheet often looks like. So here's really kind of a nice little example of just a basic spreadsheet. It looks like it has, some numbers in there. The numbers are nicely formatted. They're organized, seeing the commonalities here. And one of the things, is like, if you're looking at a spreadsheet, if you're looking at a well-designed spreadsheet, somebody has thought about what data you're putting on it, what that data means, and what data correlates with other data. And this is a really big thing about working with spreadsheets, right? So if you look at even this goofy little graphic here and kind of like break it down a little bit, they're basically, Aspen Falls Outdoor Recreation, visitors to city attractions. So there's a description. I don't know if you guys are noticing this, but this is typed into the spreadsheet, these colors and these headers. So somebody took a bunch of these little cells, combined them into one, gave it a blue background, changed the text to white, chose a bigger font, and made it look nice. Yeah, and you can do those things in a spreadsheet. These are not things you normally think you can do, right? Next, you have these locations that they're indicating. So they have a location. So this must be the header, I guess. Then zoo, pool, aquarium, garden, museum, etc. And the total. And then they have weekends, weekdays, all visitors, the difference, the entrance fee, the total fees, and they're coming up with numbers here. And so we can assume some things, right? So we assume that everything that's in the row with the zoo is related to the zoo, right? The data is all correlated to the zoo or the pool or the aquarium. Now, okay, so you guys are gonna say, yeah, duh, right? I mean, that's really kind of maybe the reaction you're having, but some people don't see this, right? The one of the reasons we even use spreadsheets is like somebody understanding that, oh, if I'm gonna compare this to that, isn't it nice to put all the stuff with this one all in one spot, all the stuff with this one all in one spot, and then I can look at them and go, oh, this one's bigger, this one's smaller, this one's more important, this one's less important. And then if I need to do a calculation, for example, they have entrance fees. And so somebody is taking the visitors and multiplying it across, so like they take all the visitors at $10 a head, and they're making $49,000. And it's like, oh, that's meaningful now, right? So now not only are we correlating the data, but we're giving it meaning. And then that meaning is used to drive decisions, right? And that's one of the real important aspects of working uh, with Excel and spreadsheets in general. Right. I'm going to go a little bit larger on this just to make the graphic a little bit bigger. So we're going to go through some of the terminology and stuff they're pointing out here, and then we'll fiddle with the spreadsheets as we're kind of moving along. All right. So whenever we're working in the spreadsheet, I think I showed this to you already. When you have an active cell, it's highlighted, right? So you click on it, it shows you here through highlights and rows and columns. But notice that there's also this box up here, right? That indicates what cell you're in. So this will happen. You'll be in a spreadsheet and it's so huge and big, you'll be like, where's my thing? Where's my cursor at? This box tells you where your cursor is at. So it tells you so you can go find it, right? Now, you're like, well, I could just move my arrow around until I see it. Well, yeah, that's true. But what if it's off the page or down 10,000 rows and over 200 rows? Yeah, spreadsheets can get that big. So that's why that's very, very helpful. Another thing to be mindful of is in Excel, they do have a zoom feature, right? And not the zoom that we're using right now, but you can zoom in on the spreadsheet and you can zoom out, right? Or you can reset it to 100%. Then you can do that dynamically, whatever works for you. Just play with those controls. What I will tell you, and I'll just go ahead and type something in. I mean, that's pretty small, right? It's okay for my eyes on my screen, but if I'm teaching you guys and you guys are like pulling it up on a second screen or God forbid a phone or a tablet, don't strain, you know. And if I ever have the stuff on the screen too small, please tell me to make it larger and I'll zoom in. But the zoom control is very handy, right? And I find it helpful. If you're ever at the point, and this is kind of the general computer thing, that you're squinting to see what's on your screen, you're doing it wrong. It's kind of my thinking. It's like you don't have to hurt your eyes to see it. You know, they put zoom controls on there for a reason, right? And I will have you mind the fact, okay, so let's do another question and answer here. How many of you wear glasses or contacts? Right? Like, well, some of you are wearing them so I can see them, obviously. Um, yeah. Yeah, I think, okay, so do you guys notice that I don't? I don't wear contacts either, right? Because I always try to, yeah, okay, so like getting up on my soapbox here, but I always try to make a point of, it's like people like, why do you make that so big? It's like, so I don't have to hurt my eyes, real frankly, right? If you're squinting, you're hurting your eyes. The other thing that you should do, and this is a real strong recommendation, is when you're working with numbers on spreadsheets, as bright as your screen can go with as much contrast as possible. Take that to heart. Also, exercise your eyes when you're looking at a screen 18 inches away or 20 inches away, whatever it is. Every once in a while, look away and focus on something 20 feet away, right? Instead of having your focus locked, it'll really mess up your eyes. I also recommend really good monitors with high refresh rates, and if you can afford it, you get like a high-end graphics card and like a monitor that refreshes at 144 hertz or something like that. And that helps a lot as well. Right. So be mindful of that. So they're doing a little thing here. They're kind of trying to build that spreadsheet, right? So they're putting in a title and a subtitle, and they're just typing it in as text. I'm just going to kind of mimic it for right now, and if you just want to experiment, feel free. So it's Aspen Falls Outdoor Recreation. Aspen Falls, I guess that's a capital F, Outdoor Recreation. And then visitors is what the subtitle is. The one thing I'll have you notice is in this first box, right? So I'm going to arrow to A1, and I can see up here in the formula bar, that's what they call this, that the text I typed into A1 is in A1. When I arrow to the right and I go to B1, even though some of the text is over that box, it's not in that box. That's kind of weird. So Excel allows the information to overflow so you can see it. However, if I type something here, that goes away. Pretty weird. Right. Right. And yes, you can adjust the columns so that doesn't happen. Another keystroke command, by the way, that is your friend, right? You're going to use this one a lot in Excel, is Control Z. Hold on the Control key and press the letter Z because I want to undo my last action. Typically, Excel will have the undo keys up here too, but we'll point that out as they bring it up. So A1, A2. So they're calling out a title and a subtitle. Point out the active cell, for example. They are also kind of putting together column labels here. And, once again, I'm going to zoom in on my PowerPoint like I can in my Excel. So they have location, weekends, weekdays, all visitors, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to type in some of that just so you get an idea. So location, was it weekends, weekdays, total, or all visitors. Okay. Type it correctly, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the stuff fits really nicely in the box, some of it doesn't. One trick that you're going to learn, right, is if you want to auto size your column, and I'm sure this is coming up, but you can hover over the divider. So like, for example, if weekdays is cut off a little bit, if I hover over the divider and see how it changes to a double arrow and you double click, it'll auto size to the width of that column or the maximum width of the text that's in the column, right? Interestingly, if I highlight the corner that highlights all the columns and I do the same thing, it does all of them at once. Kind of handy, but sometimes it gives you an effect you don't want. Like, for example, I really don't want location to be that wide. That's one of those things, right? So then I would tweak that one back. I can also adjust the height of the rows, right? Double clicking auto sizes them. And typically you don't have to mess with that too much. And I think the adjustment I made may have made that one a little smaller. We'll see. But the ability for you just to go to a cell and type something in. And then I want you to notice another thing is as I type something in, what was the next column header here? Difference, entrance. So difference. If I want to go to the next box to the right, I got two choices. I can press the tab key. That locks in the data and moves me to the right. There's an entrance fee. Or I can press enter. But what did enter do? It moved me down. And I'm wanting to go here. So tab is the key you press to lock in information and move to the right. Enter is the key you press to lock in information and move down.
Would you mind showing me one more time how to, all of my A columns are the same size, but I want location and visitors to be smaller than Aspen Falls Recreation like yours is?
Just turn your thing
Oh,
into a double arrow and then click and drag.
okay.
Now you will notice once again here that entrance fees is cut off, right? So if I double click that column, it'll size it. And these are very subjective. So you can do a double click, you can do a click and drag. Um, but just to give you an example. So we're learning a bunch of different things here. Tab to go to the right as you're entering stuff across a row. Enter to, you're locking stuff in, moving up and down. If I type something in and hit the right arrow key, same difference. or if I type something in and hit the left arrow key or up or down, the arrow key can do the same action. Traditional spreadsheet people, though, tab and enter are the keys. But the arrow keys work as well. Or you can type something and then just click somewhere with your mouse. Now, if you think about it, what I just did, that's not really good for entering the next piece of information, though, is it? It's like to help you out, right? Because now I'm jumping somewhere I don't want to be. Um, right. If you want to remove something from a cell, just go into the cell and press your delete key or backspace key. Either one works. So the first one was a delete. That's a backspace. Notice the difference, though. The backspace leaves the cursor flashing. I still have to press enter or tab to lock that in. Very, these are all very simplistic maneuvers, uh, no doubt. The other thing that they're going to point out here is like when you're typing in text and you're typing in numbers. So like if I have location, and here's one thing I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to highlight that whole area and I'm going to make those headers bold. We'll learn about borders later, but now let's just go with bold. So we're going to type in a location, zoo, pressing tab to move to the next cell. Notice how this is text. It automatically aligns to the left because text automatically aligns to the left. If I type in a number and lock it in, it aligns to the right. Okay, why? Well, because that's what you do with numbers. In numbers, for example, if I had a 3-digit number here and a 2-digit number here and a 1-digit number there, all the ones columns in all the numbers are lined up, right? The tens, the hundreds, the thousands. So numbers always align to the right automatically. You can override that. So there are, alignment controls up here. So there's left, center, etc. And there's times where it makes sense to use those and times where you leave it alone, right? It is very subjective, generally speaking, you don't mess with the formatting too much. But that's one of the key aspects of like the very first time you work, in Excel. It's like, hey, how come the numbers are here and the words are over there? I didn't want that, but it's automatic and you can override it. All right. So here's some of the keystrokes, right? We were just talking about that. How to move around quickly. Okay, enter moves you down, tab moves you over, shift tab moves you one column to the left. So if you hold down shift, so that's a fun one. I don't really use this one a lot, but I do know it. So if you hit tab, you go this way. If you do shift tab, you go the other way. Right? Now it seems like kind of dumb, but if you already got one finger sitting on tab, either your right hand can hit shift or the same hand can also hit shift right below it. Definitely a power user thing. All the arrow keys work. So, and I don't know how many of you like have discrete arrow keys on your keyboard. Another really helpful thing, real frankly, if you do a lot of spreadsheet work, is to have a keyboard that's got a 10 key keypad on the right hand side. I had laptops in the past where I did not have that. So I would like go buy a little 10 key USB thing and type it. Like if I was typing in numbers all day, I would just, and you can get them. And by the way, you can get them really cheap. I think you can pick one up at like Walmart for $10 or something. Sometimes I see them at Goodwill. Just putting it out there. Control home takes you right up to the very top. Control end takes you to the farthest right bottommost corner of the spreadsheet. Let's try that. That's pretty fun, right? So I'm going to do control end first. Now on my keyboard, and I'm just saying this because I'm on the laptop doing this, I have to hit the function key to make my end key work because it's like paired up with the page down key. But control end takes me to the very bottom right corner of what it perceives to be all of my information. Okay, it didn't go very far. you know. But if I had a really large set of data, it would be a lot more impressive. Control home takes me to top, well, top leftmost cell called A1. Right, so those are helpful. All right. Um, Here they are talking a little bit about entering the data and then starting to like merge information. So we're going to try to like mimic this a little bit. You know, the numbers really don't matter so much, like what numbers you type in. We can just throw whatever numbers in there. But I want you to just get a little bit of practice typing in both text and numbers. You can just type in what I'm typing if you wish. Uh, so aquarium, garden, museum, in total. Okay. And notice I just did those, typed them, pressed enter, typed them, press enter. That's how I did it. If you want to type it and down arrow or type it and click with your mouse, that's on you. I think the easiest way from a typing standpoint is type and press enter. Do the same thing with the numbers. And yes, I'm inventing numbers here. In fact, I'm getting lazy and just laying my hands on the keyboard or in the number row and just typing a bunch of numbers, randomly. I don't know what the total is, so I'm not going to hard code that. Right, we're going to do that with a formula, and then of course you can do it. Weekdays might be smaller numbers. I don't know, something like that. And you notice once again what the maneuver I was making: type a number, enter; type a number, enter; type a number, enter, etc. Next thing that they want us to do here is um, talk, kind of deal with this header information, right, and turning them into this more beautiful looking thing. What we can do, and this is kind of interesting, is if I want this, the content of cell A1, to span across the whole width of the table, so all the way through column G, I can take my mouse, click and drag across, or, right, and I would tend to do this with the keyboard also. I'm in the first cell and I'm holding down the shift key and hitting the right arrow. Right, and I go as far as I need to. On the home ribbon tab, there's a thing called merge and center. So it'll take, what is it, 6 or 7 individual cells and turn them into one cell. And the content is centered. We'll do the same thing with visitors. And now they're looking a little better, right? Looking a little cleaner at least. What you might also want to do, and I'm sure they're going to push us there eventually, is you might want to choose to maybe up your font size a little bit. Maybe you can make it bold, something to that effect. I'm not going to overdo this. Just like show you how it's done. But now functionally, when I arrow through here, all of these cells here are still individual, right? When I get here, that's treated as one cell. And I want you to notice which cell reference it takes. It takes the first cell in the merged block. So this is still A2. This one's A1. Right? You can tell by looking there. All right. So if you're wondering, it's like, well, what if I didn't want to do that? Well, you can Control Z, right? So you can get your way out. Or you can come up here and unmerge as well. Just be mindful when you do that. If you ever merge and there's data and the stuff that you're merging, so let's say if I had like some info in G1 and I did a merge from A1 to G1, whatever's in G1 is gone. Generally speaking, and I say this, I when I'm, especially when I'm working with data, I try not to merge anything. Right. If I'm working with making something look nice, because that's really the point of this, I think merging is okay. All right, let's keep rolling here. So we merged those, right? And now they want to show us a little math. So this is kind of like taking a programming class, right? It's like, hey, remember all the math operators, folks? Right? And this is why it's good to have Python or some sort of like programming language first, not that you really need it to do Excel. But notice the correlation to programming, right? We have all the standard plus minus asterisk for multiplication, forward slash for division. We also have a percent sign. Yeah, it's not modulus here though, right? Yeah. So a percent sign, well, in a formula, and really what they're referring to here, a percent sign means a percent sign, meaning that it's a percentage between 0 and 1 expressed as a multiple of 100, right? So that's actually a percent sign. We don't write that into formulas. Be mindful. The caret symbol, though, is something we use in formulas. And when we use it in a formula, it's for exponents, right? At least for now, that's going to be kind of rare, but those are the basic math operators. Now, we typed in some nonsense numbers, and we want to now kind of do a little bit of math. So I'm going to show you guys a couple different ways to do this. And we're going to start with just basic addition, and then we'll move up to formulas and stuff. But just this is real introductory level stuff. So right now we're looking at correlated data. So we have the zoo, right, with their two attendance figures. And I want to add those two together. Right. So whenever I'm doing a mathematical formula in a cell, okay, so some of you might be like, you can just take B5 plus C5 and add them together. Right. Well, and that's exactly what we're going to do to start with. So, but when you write a formula in Excel and you're in the cell, the first key you press is the equal sign. That tells Excel that you're about to write a formula. And then you can do this a few different ways. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do it. And then you choose the way that works best for you. And the way I'm about to do it first is the way I would do it least, by the way, which is to manually type the formula in when I do what I call a cell reference. So I don't want to, like, for example, okay, I could do this. I could say 3169 plus 234 and press enter, and I have the result. And when I go back up here, these values are hard coded. All right. However, if somebody, excuse me, somebody said, oh, wait, the weekday attendance was not 234, it was 237. My formula is broken, right? Now it's not correct because why? I hard coded the numbers into the formula. You can see the formula up here. After I type in the formula in the cell and I press enter or I press tab, what I see in the cell is the result of the formula, not the formula itself. So if I want to tweak this formula, I would come up here. So I could change that to a 7, and then it would be, I guess, technically correct. But this is not the reason we have Excel. Excel is all about references, right? So like the preferred way to do it really is to say equals, and then I look at the cell. I have cell B5, so I type B5. Notice how it color codes. And then notice how the cell is highlighted with the same color as what I have in the cell. And then I'm going to add that to C5. Different color, different highlight, and it shows me on the spreadsheet what I'm adding. Then I can press enter and get the right value. Now, if I arrow back up there and I can see the formula up here, right? The one thing that you will notice, and this is why this is so powerful, is if this number changes for some reason, the formula dynamically updates because the formula does not have hard-coded values. It has references to cells. We call that a cell reference. And the programming correlation is like, I have a variable, one of the variables just changed, so the formula changes too. or the result of the formula changes. Right. And I'm going to escape, right? You know, as I was clicking around there and it was like messing up my formula. All right. Here's the other secret sauce of Excel, right? Now I could come down here and type the next formula because I want to do totals for all of these, right? So I could say equals, B6 plus C6. Great, right? And then I can just keep typing my formulas, and that's great. I only have 3 or 4 entries, not a big deal, right? But what if I had like 30 entries? I have to go type 30 formulas, right? Watch what Excel can do automatically. I can click this little square in the corner, right? And notice when I move my cursor over it, and I'm just going to make this just a tad bigger, put my cursor over it, it changes to a small plus sign. If I click and drag that down, it will copy the formula from D6 to D7 and D8. And if I click inside there and verify the formula, you see how I do that? I click on the formula bar, it automatically updated the formulas to the right thing. Okay, not a big deal with 3 or 4 entries. But if I had like 100 or 1,000 calculations to do, and I can just pull that down and boom, I'm done. Yeah, that's now and if now it's starting to resonate with you, yeah, this is what Excel brings to the table, and this is one of the lowest level automations it does, but super cool and super powerful. Right. Another thing, and I know they're going to take us here eventually, is they're going to want us to total up all the weekday attendance and weekend attendance. And once again, we can do this a couple different ways. So I'll show you one approach, right? So one approach would be, all right, well, I'm going to take, and this time instead of typing in the cell references, I typed in my equal sign. Now I'm just going to click on the cell. Notice how it drops the right cell number in. Then I do a plus. I click on the next one. I do a plus. I click on the next one. I do a plus. I click on the next one. And then I press enter to lock it in. And I can go back and look at it and click up here and see it. I love the color coding. It's super awesome, right? Because now you know what they're talking about. But I was able to basically build that formula really simply by clicking the cell to grab the right value for the cell, the mathematical operator I want, and I just kept building. That's totally cool, right? As you can imagine, there's a better way, right? This is where we're going to also expand, because really what we're doing here is we're taking the sum of all the numbers above, and they have built-in formulas, like programming languages have built-in functions that perform that action. So I could do a sum, do an open parenthesis, and then I take my mouse and I click drag the whole column. I close the parenthesis and press enter, and there's the outcome. And I want you to look at that formula really carefully and look at the syntax of it. We'll repeat that here. So I'm just going to do sum. I'm going to click and drag. All right, and before I hit that closing parenthesis here and press enter, look at the verbiage, or like how you put the statement together. I put the starting point, which is cell D5, and the ending point, which is cell D8, separated by a colon. So I'm adding that entire range. This is only 4 cells, but it could be 10,000. Okay. And then you just simply do an enter. Once again, if any of the values changes, it dynamically updates. Did you notice it updated this cell, and this cell all at the same time? So one of the reasons we use formulas, right, instead of hard coding numbers, is that way if data changes, all your stuff updates correctly. You don't have to go back and redo it. Right? This is really super cool if you're not picking up on it. And all we've done so far is addition and sums, which are basically addition, right? So these are really powerful things. So they kind of go through these here. Um, now they're trying to do a difference. We can practice with that. All right, so let's do the difference in the difference column. So here, I'm going to show you how I would probably do it if I want a difference between weekends or and weekdays, right? Click, minus, click, enter. And yes, once again, I could repeat, equals, click, minus, click, enter. Or since the formula is the same going all the way down, I can grab the little plus, pull it down. It does it automatically. So practice with that. I think that's kind of neat. So that was subtraction. I do want you to notice, and I'll be real frank, I never use like if I'm typing a formula. All right, so I'm just gonna show you, right? And that's not a good one. D5 plus C5. I'm just throwing numbers in here. You don't have to follow this. But if I want to cancel the formula, they do have this little cancel button up here. Real frankly, I like never ever click on it. You know, that's me. You might love it and click on it all the time. Right. So if you want to cancel it, that's one way to do it. Or if you're typing one in, you know, and you want to lock it in, you can hit the green arrow, right? Which is the same as pressing enter. Right. I'm deleting that one. That one's not relevant. Here we're going to hard code some data. So I got 10, 12, 4, and 11. Let's just type that in. So I have 10, 12, 4, and 11. Right. And you can tell where they're leading us to, right? We hard coded some data. Those are the entry fees. And then we're going to do multiplication. So let's practice our multiplication. So we're going to go to the total fees. And the total fees are going to be a combo of all the visitors times the entrance fee. And then we'll press enter. Well, as we did with the subtraction and addition, I can grab that little corner and I can pull it down. That should be accurate. Isn't that quick and easy? That's just crazy, right? And then the other thing, and I'm not sure if they're taking us there yet to like format it as money, right? We're not using the same numbers as them. And then they break down percentages here. So they're going to do what is the percent of weekday visitors. All right, so we're gonna like play with that. But the other thing that and they're not doing it here yet. They're not showing us the sums, right? So they didn't do any of the totals yet, and I was doing those, so I'm kind of racing ahead a little bit. But I am gonna do a sum here. Now I was like dragging the formulas down for like multiplication and subtraction and addition. Can I drag these formulas across? Yeah, the answer is yes, by the way. I can drag across if it's the same action. If I'm looking for a sum here of these four numbers, and this is the sum of these four numbers, I could grab the little corner and move it across. Okay, but maybe this doesn't make sense, right? Why doesn't this one make sense? Because the one I drug across is subtraction. It's not relevant, right? So Control Z. This one is relevant though. This is a sum. And with this one, I don't have to retype the formula. I can just do a Control C, which is a copy, and then a Control V, which is a paste. Or you can right-click copy, right-click paste if that works for you. And now I do have the sum formula in here, and I can see what it's affecting. right? And it's correct. All right. Everybody doing okay so far? All right. I think what we should do is we should take a break. We've been going for about an hour now, so we'll pause the recording and we'll do a 5 minute break at 6:43. We'll come back at 6:48-ish. All right. It looks like the next thing that they want us to do is look at the percentage of weekday visitors for each one of those things, where we're going to do a little bit of division. So we're going to practice our division here. So I'm going to copy this text, percent of weekday visitors. So I'm going to go back over to my spreadsheet here. And we'll just say percentage of weekday visitors. And then we're going to look at each one of these items. So notice how I just highlighted those and copied them. Now, once again, you can do this a few different ways. Click, drag, highlight, and then Control C or right click to copy. Or you can use the cut copy commands up here. Another way to do it, and I'm going to press my escape key to uncopy them, is go to the first cell, hold down the shift key and down arrow. So that's a real useful approach too. And I kind of, real frankly, do a mix of those two approaches. Depends on what my hand was doing just before I was doing it. You know, if I'm moving my mouse around, I'll just use the mouse to do it. If I was already keyboarding, I'll use the keyboard. I just copied those down here, and then what they want us to do is we're going to take all the weekday visitors, right, the total, and we're going to take the individual locations daily total to get the percentage, right? So let's build the formula here. I'm going to click in cell B12. I'm going to type equals, and then I'm going to look at, well, I don't want to type in any numbers. I want to use cell references only. So we're going to take this value and divide it by the total, and then press enter. Notice that's coming up as a decimal number. We're going to worry about the formatting in a second. So what percent is this? This is 28.2%, basically. If I want to drag that formula down to these others, why is this failing on me? This is really a good question, right? Because, oh, I thought you could just copy the formulas. This will work. That's what your brain's probably telling you. But I'm getting a divide by zero error. Here's the why. When I click on this formula, it moved the cell reference for the aquarium to the right spot. But all of a sudden, the other one moved with it. They moved synchronously. Notice that? But I didn't want the second one to move. So here's how you fix that problem in Excel. Since I want this really pinned to square C9, and actually this is not where I'm going to do the fix. I'm going to delete those actually. I'm going to come back up here and re-engineer the formula, and I'm going to put in dollar signs. Oops, that's a hash mark in front of the C and the 9. And what that does in Excel is it makes sure I can't move the column reference and I can't move the cell reference. So when I copy and paste this, so I'm just going to copy, paste, and then I click in here to see the formula. This still refers to the correct value I want locked in. This one refers to the one that I want to move. Notice that one does not have dollar signs. What we'll learn later is that you can selectively put the dollar sign in front of the column or the row. But usually when you're trying to lock into a cell, you put a dollar sign in front of them. So that way when you're copying the formula, and now I can move this down and it will move correctly. So when I click into the formulas, you can see that it moved to the correct square. That one takes a little bit of getting used to if you've never done that before, but it's a common issue with spreadsheets. Now, another thing, and I assume they're taking us here, um, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this title bold because I think it'll look better. Um, but there's these formatting commands that are built into Excel as well. For example, we know this is a percentage. Now, I know what the calculation is, and I could like retype it and say 28.1735%. Or I can come up to the format toolbar here, right? And notice that it's in this like ribbon bar area. And notice how they have a percentage tool. So if I click on that, it just turns it into a percent. And so I can do that with all of these, by the way. So I can highlight a bunch at once and hit the percent. And then you might look at it and go, you know what? That's not enough precision in my percentage because I know there were decimal places attached to it. So I can use these two tools here. We'll play with these a lot, all right, to either increase or decrease the amount of numbers after the decimal point. So I'm going to increase it. I think that's probably adequate. Right. And if you want to play with it, you can add as much precision as you want or decrease it. Also, as we're kind of looking at these values here, these are all dollar amounts, right? I can also format for currency, and you'll notice that there is a little dollar sign here. And not only that, but they allow me to format according to different monetary systems because, you know, the dollar is not the only monetary system, folks, right? We also have, you know, euros and whatever. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for US English, right? This is how we format our dollar amounts here. Notice the inclusion of the dollar sign, commas in the thousands position, and 2 decimal points after. Once again, if a decimal points after are not relevant, you can decrease that. You can remove those. Right? And I would say in this case, there's no pennies after the decimal point. They're kind of irrelevant. The entrance fees are also dollar amounts, so that one would be a logical one to do that with as well. You might also want to truncate those. That's subjective, you know, but I think that's acceptable. Does changing the formatting of the number change the number that's being calculated? It does not. This is a formatting command only. It's what we're seeing that's changing, not the underlying value, by the way. So when I click in the cell here, there still is that precision or detail still is captured in the same here, right? All right. I know that's a lot of little tidbitty stuff pretty quickly with Excel, but for those of you that have done this before, it shouldn't be too overwhelming. If you're brand new to it, it might feel that way a little bit, right? And that's okay. Practice with it is really kind of a good thing. But I think this is a nice little example because they show us how to do like most of the stuff that you do in basic spreadsheet building. This is the kind of stuff you do most of the time. You make lists, you have text, you have numbers, you have dollar amounts, you have some simple calculations, you come up with some totals, you do a little cell referencing, try to make it look as nice as possible, and all that. The other thing that they're pointing out here too is if you wanted to manually adjust the width of a column, it is possible to do so numerically and set it to a very, very particular setting. Now, I'm going to be real frank about this. I don't think there's a lot of reasons where I need to go in and actually declare how many pixels wide my box should be or my column should be. I tend to do it more from the visual standpoint of like, all right, I'm adjusting this, but I do want you to notice as I'm adjusting it, do you notice a little pop-up that comes up? It's telling me how many pixels and what the width is and okay, spreadsheet dimensions, right? Another way to adjust that is you can right click a column and choose the column width and get that little box that they're putting in there. So if you want to make it a very specific amount, like they're doing 12, you can do that. Or if you wanted to make all of them 12, I could highlight all the columns, right click, do a column width, and type in 12, and then all of them are exactly the same width. Is that good? Is it bad? I mean, it's very, very much a personal choice. I think it's a little too spacious, but hey, it looks okay. I can also do the same thing, by the way, with the height. So like if I highlighted a bunch of rows, and you notice how I'm highlighting here, that I'm actually in the margin doing the highlighting, right? I can right click and adjust the height, but you want to be really careful when you do that. So for example, um, you know, right now as the arrow points right, I can do the right click, but as it changes to the double-headed arrow, that won't apply. All right, but right click, and then I can choose a row height and specify it once again how I need. I can also do that mechanically, like, I could do this. Not very good, by the way, right? Or make it really big. And one thing that I think that, and this comes a little bit with old age, sometimes they've taken stuff and spreading it apart a little bit and giving it a little breathing room. And if you guys were like my web students, where I teach people how to make web pages, that's like a really big thing in layout. It's like everybody tries to squeeze everything they can into a screen, but sometimes it's better to spread it apart a little bit so it's easier for your eyes to see it. Right? Very, very subjective. Right? Now, maybe you're looking at this and going, yeah, that's a little better. It's okay. But you can play with the widths. And then once again, you can always auto size them if you wish. That's on you. Right. So they did all the columns set to 12. They wanted us to merge that little title down here. So let's do that. And they're merging it across two cells. All right. Let's merge that across two cells. It doesn't really quite fit, but we'll do it anyhow. And maybe if I unbold it, it'll fit a little better. Not quite. Right. So maybe I'll just change the verbiage here a little bit. There you go. Make it work. So I did a merge on that one. So I'm just following all the little things they're doing in here to kind of practice. Now, here's kind of a fun little thing. The colors that they did at the top, they're taking us right to what they call the style gallery. And I think that's actually a fine way to go. I will be real frank that I rarely use that tool. But, because I usually make different color choices, this once again comes from being from a web background. But this is a really handy tool, and you'll notice that they like Microsoft Word has style sheets for like headings and certain types of things. They have pre-configured color scheme, font setups, font sizes. It's all kind of built in, and you can just kind of experiment with it. They're using that one blue box down here, so we'll try to do the same thing. So I'm going to come up here and highlight the Aspen Falls Outdoor Recreation thing. And then you'll notice right here, it says Cell Styles. You hit the little drop down arrow, right? Another tip, if you're not full screen, you might not see some of this stuff. So here's kind of what happens, right? The stuff is either like this, or if it's even smaller, some of it drops off. So go full screen so you see everything. But I'm going to go ahead, hit that down arrow. I found the one I think they used, right? I think they're calling it Accent One. And I don't know what they did for that one, or if they did. They did the 40% one. So for visitors, I'm going to hit Cell Styles and do 40%. Right. And okay, granted, what those settings are doing, what are those settings doing? They're choosing a pre-configured font color and color background and font style all in one fell swoop. You could do it manually as well. So for example, if I wanted to take this, highlight all of these, and I want to change the background, I can go to the fill color and I can choose a, you know, a pleasing color, hopefully. And I always say, be careful with the colors. And then if I don't like the font color, I can come in here and change it to whatever I wish, right? And I'm not really sure that I would be changing this font color, but I'm just going to do it for the sake of it. So you can use the styles that are here, right? Experiment, right? You can create your own. So if you have like a special one that you came up with, I was like, that's the coolest Comic Sans font I've ever seen, right? Um, in fluorescent purple. You can save it as a style and leave it here in the gallery and use it over and over again. It's totally a thing. Um, Once again, honestly, I rarely use these, right? The ones that I've been kind of using a little bit lately are these when I do like conditional formatting, red, green, yellow kind of thing. Um, but I think that's kind of neat. You can also style stuff collectively. So for example, if I want all the totals here to all be bold, I can highlight all of them and hit the bold button or right click bold. And I think that's helpful. So please experiment with that. Remember, this is not an assignment. This is just practice. Right? All right. Then they got to the sum function. We already did this, remember? Yeah, we did the sum function. And then we dragged it across. And then we did a copy paste over. Remember all that? Another thing that they do try to point out, once again, like I did, is that the whole point of like putting cell references in formulas is so that the numbers can change and it dynamically updates, right? Um, really powerful aspect of Excel. And if you haven't figured out yet, Excel really is all about those cell references. Like programming is all about using variables. So if you have a variable in like a Python program and that variable changes and you use it in 20 calculations, all the calculations change. So it shows you really that Excel spreadsheets, every cell is capable in a way of holding a little mini computer program. That's really kind of the mind blower, right? Um, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. They show you how to use the little plus sign. We did that already, so I apologize. I kind of raced ahead and did all this stuff they're showing you later, but hey, it just seemed to fit, right? So we did all that. Oh, this is kind of interesting. At this point, this is something we didn't do. Here's where they're adding. Oh, we need another row here. So I'm going to show you guys how to insert a row. And they're adding the pool. Okay, so let's try this approach. So here we are. If I wanted to insert a row, and the way that they're doing it here, right, is, all right, so normally the way I would do it is like, if I was here and I wanted to insert a row, I would place my active cursor somewhere on the row that I want it be below the one I'm inserting, basically. And you notice how I did an insert and it just did one cell? Yeah, that's not good. All right. But what if I click the down arrow and insert a whole row? Now it does the whole thing, right? Otherwise, it does become highly localized if I just hit insert. And sometimes that is what you want. But in this case, we really do want the whole row, right? So when you do an insert, it tries to do it before where you're at. One thing I think is kind of interesting is if you use Google Sheets, Google Sheets allows you to insert above or insert below. It has separate commands for it. Excel always tries to do it above. Right? I'm going to control Z my action here. And then another way to do it, and this is the way that I typically do it. I don't usually go to the ribbon bar for this one. I usually right click here in the margin and do an insert from here, and it adds the row. All right, that's another way. Or I can right click, then choose insert from the menu, right? And then I want you to watch what's going to happen here. So I'm going to insert, but it doesn't know which way I'm doing it. You want to insert something and shift everything to the right. So I could do it this way, right? Kind of weird. Or I can right click, insert, and move it down. Yeah, that's going to destroy data, so don't do it, right? Or I can right click, insert, and then do an entire row, or notice an entire column. So the way that I'm also inserting a row, I could, for example, insert a whole column. Right, so these are just helpful little tips. So I'm going to just pick one of the ways, whatever way you pick, and then we're going to put in the pool, and then we're just going to, come up with some numbers. We'll copy our formula down. We'll copy that formula down too. I don't know what the entrance fee for the pool is, but I'm not sure it matters too much. We'll make it affordable for people with families. It's pretty affordable. And then of course, we'll also copy this formula down as well. Notice how all the other formulas updated dynamically. We also really should add an entry here. So let's insert another row. We'll type in pool. And once again, just copy paste our formula, and that should be correct. If you're not sure, you can always click on it and see if is it doing the right math. I think so. All right, let's keep rolling here, folks. Making good progress, I think. I guess it was 11 bucks. I totally did it. They do also show this, and this is one of those other tools that I don't really use so often. But let's just say that I forgot to, copy those formulas over. As I'm kind of working here, they do have what they call the autofill, and I'm trying to figure out how do I trigger that. Yeah, whenever you okay, and I think that's really what it is. All right, there you go. So you highlight one row that's complete and another row that's not, and then they have a little autofill panel, right? And oh boy, that's not at all the view they're giving us, is it? And I'm looking for formulas. And you see some of the little tools here. I'm not getting the autofill though. Why? So you can use this little fill command, and then that'll kind of trigger the same thing. It is, and this is, you'll hear me say this a lot, right? There's all these little tools that pop up in these little like icons and stuff. I tend to not use those, and I always try to educate myself on them. So if you guys are more comfortable using those tools, you'll find your way through it. Now, of course, because I am using tools to kind of like verify that my calculations are still correct, this is kind of the data geek in me, to check all the formulas, even though I use the tool to copy them, just to be sure, because you don't know. Like, what if you pressed the wrong key, or it copied the wrong formula, or it's not the one you intended? You need to be mindful of that. All right. There are other formatting commands here. We've already played with some of them. So we've played with the currency ones. We've played with the percentage ones. Um, and those you can read up on here if you wish, right? Um, and so we've already performed this step. So here's kind of an interesting approach where they're doing the formatting, they're doing the currency formatting, but cell zero is the only one with the dollar sign, implying that all the rest, and that's kind of an accounting thing, by the way. And they're doing the same with the entrance fee. I don't consider that a real big deal, but if you're curious about how to do that, you can go in there and you can actually choose uh, those formats, right? And you can dig in and adjust the formats. You can actually go in there and tweak them if you wish. Not a big fan of doing that, but it is possible. Notice that with all of these um, visitors amounts that they're putting commas on all the numbers. Let's do that too. So I'm going to just highlight this entire range, which is these are the raw visitor amounts. And we just want to put commas in, right? Now notice what that did. It put me in accounting mode, but I don't want to be in accounting mode, so I can get rid of the precision, right? Or I can change to, I don't see a pre-configured one here in the formula bar. So I would probably do it this way. It's the fastest way. Does that make it a little easier to read? These aren't really large numbers, so I would argue maybe, maybe not. But it is the convention, right? That we like to see our hundreds and thousands and millions and billions separated by commas. Um, you know, and then they have the billionaire club, they call it the 3 comma club. You ever hear that expression? Yeah, that's because none of us are billionaires. Is why, right? We're lucky to be a millionaire at this level, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be here at Gateway for sure. All right. So another thing that you can do, and once again, I'm not super huge on doing this on spreadsheets, but you can do spell checking in spreadsheets. In fact, if I intentionally, um, you know, misspell a word, you know, um, you can trigger the spell check to fix it, right? So this one, notice it's not like Microsoft Word where it's highlighting it, right? So there's a little bit more responsibility on you to know what's going on. If you do want to spell check, and you can tell how little I use this because I really don't ever spell check in a spreadsheet. I guess that's probably bad. Um, yeah, so how do you get the spelling dialogue up? All right. All right. And notice what I did? I don't even know where to find it. So I just went to the search bar and I searched for it, right? Because it's not something I pulled down from the menus. Does anybody know where to pull it down from the menus directly?
Would it
Data,
be
maybe?
under review?
Steve, you're probably correct. There you go. Yep. And notice they have a thesaurus. Nice. Okay. So I can bring up my spelling panel, right? It's giving me a suggestion. I'm going to go ahead and change it, or I can ignore it, right? Because sometimes you get data that's, if you want to continue, I'm going to say no. All right. But you could spell check the whole document. Um, just be aware that it's there mostly. Now, if you were creating a report for something very formal, like a board meeting or something like that, you would probably want to go ahead and take care of that. All right. So they show how spell checking looks when you complete. Um, Whenever you are working with page output, and that's what they're kind of pointing us to here, or whenever you're working with any of the menu bars, and I will have you notice that it's changed since they've changed versions. So now when you're looking at a certain ribbon bar, you see the ribbon bar and it highlights like this. If you have an older version, it would highlight like this. You guys see that? but it shows you which tab you're on, basically. Um, what we're going to do next here is, because they're trying to show us how to do basically a print setting. Um, and I don't think that this is a really critical skill, and I'm just kind of putting it out there because I think a lot of times you're not worried about going to paper with a spreadsheet. You know, you're really more screen focused. Um, if you do want to mess with your printed output, follow basically what they're doing here. I am going to click the back arrow here, and we're going to go to page layout, and you should be able to see where the print margins are. And this is where I usually like to start. So if I was going to put this on a printer, I'd come in here, I'd hit that button. You guys notice this little dotted line that popped up? What this is showing me is the way I have it laid out right now, column G would be on the second page. Probably not good, right? So one way I could adjust that is I could take these columns and make them all a little bit smaller. And now notice it fits. So I think that's a helpful little tip. Now that messed up this, you know, but you know what? Half a dozen of one, you know, whatever. So keep that in mind. So the way I would probably fix that is I would probably just left justify it for right now. All right. Going back here though, if you wanted to look at what it looks like on a printer, right? So these are all your page setup tools here. So for example, I could see what the margins would be set to, right? You can control them here. If you're printing horizontally or vertically, sometimes in spreadsheets, horizontal is better, right? So you can switch that around. You can also determine your output size. And really, I think the print area is really important. Like, so for example, if I want to make sure certain stuff prints, I would highlight it and then I would call that the print area, right? So you can force it to print that. You can also set it up to print titles. Like, so for example, I have a print area set. And then if I have, for example, if I wanted the title bars to print on every page, I could declare them here. So for example, I could have those two rows repeat in every document if it was printed. And real frankly, once again, I don't think that these are really critical settings because most of us aren't going to be going to print with it. When I was first getting into IT, man, we would print everything. You know, we just didn't know any better, right? Boss wants to see a report, he wants it on paper. I don't care if he used Excel. I don't want to see it on screen. I want it on paper. You know, I'm going to say that these days most people are fine looking at it on screen. So I would say like these, all these print related settings here, experiment with them as you need them, basically. It is a helpful tip though, if you do a control P and you're pushing out to a printer. Now you can see I don't even have a printer attached to my machine, right? So it's just trying to output to a PDF. What's it trying to print right now? Well, I'm not even sure. And I'm not sure I'm printing from the right little spot here. But if we're in Excel, let's go back because I think I might have set the print area. Let's just try to do that again. Let's do a control P. No scaling. I think I messed up my print area, but good. Clear print area. Now let's try it. There we go. All right. So this will show you what it'll print. So now you can see there's kind of looks okay, kind of doesn't, right? It's got some issues. Like for example, do I really want to see the rows and the columns? Probably not, right? So I could remove those. But there are a lot of settings here that you can tweak. The print preview is actually very helpful. So play with it, you know, if you're going to go that route. There are times where you might turn stuff into PDFs, but hopefully not, you know. Um, if you are working with your spreadsheet and you want to display your formulas, so like you can make all your formulas appear at once, so you can do that basically from the formula menu. And I'll show you how to do that really quick. There are formulas, and then show formulas, and it shows all the formulas on the sheet. Notice it's making it wider temporarily, but at least you can see them all at once. That is a helpful feature, right? You can just toggle it on and off. The other nice thing about this, the reason I use this one a lot is to see, like, is that a formula or is that a hard coded value? You know, that's for me one of the reasons I use it. All right, I think we did the print dialog already. All right, so from here they kind of go into like basically doing exercises and stuff, and they do get into um, charting here, which is not something we're doing at the moment. Um, what I would encourage you, I'm going to cap the lecture piece here because I do want to talk about the homework, but I would encourage you to kind of look at these slides if you're curious. There's not really a lot of stuff that we need to do right now with the rest of this. So I'm going to cap the PowerPoint and then take us to the homework so you guys have a lay of the land of what you need to do with the homework. So let me get browser up on screen here. There is a quiz. So the quiz is kind of based on some of the stuff that we just did. So you can watch the video for the information. It's also based upon these LinkedIn video links up here. There's 2 assignments. And basically the way the assignments work is there's a set of instructions, and I always recommend you click on the assignment title for these because there is a starter spreadsheet. So you don't have to type it all in, but then what you'll do is you'll format everything so it looks nice, calculate totals for fall, spring, and summer. You have an example to look at, so you have a target view. But I do want you to do it with formulas. I don't want you hard coding the stuff, right? And I want you to notice how very, very similar it was to what we just did. Super similar, right? I mean, it's not verbatim, but it's close, right? So we have enrollment numbers, totals for courses, semester totals, and then summer as a percentage of the total. And you'll have to use some of the techniques that we just demonstrated to make this happen, right? So that's the first exercise. The second exercise is one where you're going to recreate this. Now, I do want you to notice that they have colors in here. So for example, you notice that they have the header is colored with a white font, and then the data rows have alternating colors. So that's a thing you can kind of do too, and I can show you that really quick. So for example, you could take pool and museum, right? You can just highlight them like this basically, and then basically just give them a different fill color, something light and tasteful, basically. One thing I will tell you is if you do use colors on the spreadsheet, try to be subtle. No bright primary colors, reds, yellows, pinks, fuchsias, fluorescence, that kind of thing. Because usually when you're doing spreadsheets, you are conveying information and you want to keep it business-like. That second assignment also involves some calculation, so you have to do a little bit of extrapolation here. I will cover the solutions when we get together next time, but I do want you to work through these on your own. But when we get back together and I show the solutions, I'll record a solution video to go with it. So this video will end